them face whatever this is and have a dialogue with it, as if the spirit of depression were like an angel coming to visit them to give them a new message, that there's a lost person inside, a person who's been abandoned, their real self who's crying out saying, when do I get any time? When do you going to pay any attention to me? I may not have any market value. You know, I may not be great on the job, but I'm worth something as a person. Are you going to pay some attention to me? And this draws the person in there, and they meet this other aspect, and when by the time they work through the depression and coming out, they'll live a more balanced life. Yes, they work, but work isn't everything. They have some time for themselves. They have some time for friends, whatever. So, in the Native American approach then to medicine, what is it we're to do? A medicine then is a problem that's asking you to recognize the value of it. And how do you do that? Is to be able to look at the problem like a mirror and see yourself in it. Look into it as if you were looking into a mirror. And the value of the healer from a spiritual point of view is to help be that kind of a mirror. A person who can be with another person in such a way that their presence helps that person see themselves in their problem. Be able to, in effect, then reclaim themselves. Each of us, when we come across a medicine and we're out of life, it's like we've lost our soul. We've lost touch with who we really are. And the problem, the medicine, has come to restore us to who we are. Can you then, as the therapist, not fix the person, but your presence be like a mirror so they can now see themselves, find themselves, because their problem is taking them on a journey of seeking to make contact with their lost self. And you, and working in conjunction with their problem, work as a mirror for them to finally see their lost self reflected there in it. Your ability to do that, where does it come from? Now the Native Americans have the notion of a witch doctor. Most indigenous people have the role of the shaman. The shaman is not a doctor in our sense of someone who's been trained in the techniques of healing, know how to operate, when to give aspirin and stuff like that. But the shaman is someone who's developed healing ability by being sick and having healed from it. The notion, the image of the wounded healer, that is a person whose healing ability has come from the process that they've been through themselves of having gone through something and come out the other end of it. Now that's like the story that I was telling you with the alcoholism. Very often in native cultures, somebody goes crazy, they get a horrible illness, goes into spasms, and the shaman recognizes, here's a person who is being visited by the medicines, and as they ride through it, they come out the other end. Maybe that person is meant to be a healer themselves. We can help others only to the extent that we've learned how to help ourselves. We've come to understand the value of acceptance. We've understood and able to listen to ourselves. As we are able to listen and mirror within ourselves, then it makes it possible for us to listen and mirror to others. We'll find that if somebody is going through a process that is threatening to us, because we haven't gone through that, or it touches something in us that we haven't faced, our tendency will be to either push the person away, blame them for their problem, or try to fix them up real quick because we're feeling very nervous about it. If, on the other hand, we have been through such a process and we understand it and are accepting of it, we can help them have some acceptance of it, and we can take them or accompany them on a journey of recovery. Now, in the case of people who have disturbing psychic experiences. How does that fit into this model? You take a person who wakes up one morning and has had a horrible dream in which somebody has been smashed and cut up and so on, and it's like a nightmare for them, and they wake up in a sweat. The next day they see on the news that a body was found out in the woods, and police found this young person who was beat up and slashed and so on. And when the person who had the dream sees that on the TV, they say, "Oh my gosh, I dreamt that." And they recognize, hey, that wasn't just a nightmare, that was real. Wow, why would I have that? I'm very confused about this. This would be an example of a disturbing psychic experience. It didn't seem to serve any purpose. It wasn't like the dream would have helped them go on and prevented it. Many people are plagued with having, for example, dreams of airplanes crashing. And they think, gosh, I could call, I could try to prevent this, what could I do? They can't do anything. They feel very upset about it, because why would they have this experience? Why would they be taken through this trauma of coming down out of the sky and crashing on the ground and feeling everybody hollering and frightened and so on, if they couldn't do anything about it? It's not serving any purpose. Sometimes they feel guilty that maybe if they dreamt it, maybe they helped cause it to happen. They're plagued by this. Well, what you find is, let's just treat these experiences, let's just pretend for a moment that these experiences are their medicine. Let's just pretend for a moment and assume in our model that they're having these experiences for a purpose. But the purpose relates to them and what it mirrors to them. If a person, and we all have these, person starts to ignore certain things about themselves because it's not convenient, because they're ashamed, because they feel guilty, because they don't know how to handle those feelings. Maybe a person got hurt by somebody and they just can't handle the pain, so they have to suppress it. Maybe a person hurt somebody else and they can't deal with the guilt, and so they have to suppress it. Maybe a person feels ashamed about some disfigurement or about some quirk in their character, and so they try to ignore it. But supposing the person needs to deal with that, supposing it's that for their own health, for their own wholeness, what they've pushed away, for some reason, they actually need to embrace if they're going to be whole. How are they going to be put in contact with this if they won't look at it? Well, maybe they could be put in contact with it vicariously. You know how sometimes it's easier to deal with someone else's problems than with your own. You know, perhaps say like you're not happy with your husband. He's kind of ignores you and he doesn't really pay much attention and he dismisses you a lot, and you feel very lonely and very sad, but there's nothing that you can do about it because you have no other income. You're totally dependent on him, and you feel very guilty that you can't do anything about it, ashamed that you don't have more strength of character to take action, and so you just push the whole thing down. You push down the fact that you're lonely, you push down the fact that you're very needy because there's nothing you can do about it, you say, so just put it behind you. But the fact of the matter is that you do need to take some action. You do need to recognize this. Well, it's interesting how then life will have a way of putting you in with somebody who's going through something similar. And they start telling you about how their spouse ignores them and so on. And you find yourself telling them, hey man, you shouldn't take that. Stand up to the person and tell him. Or why don't you start going back to school or something, and then you can find yourself a job and you can get out of there. And you find yourself telling that person all these things that you'd be telling yourself if you were going to deal with it. But it's hard for you to deal with it with yourself. So you deal with it vicariously by the way you react to this person. Now suppose there is no person like that in your life. No one with whom you can vicariously work through your problem. well then maybe you can jump the boundaries of time and space and psychically seek out such a